All right, so this is going to be a tutorial on how to use Adobe Bridge, which is one thing we'll do in Photo 3. And the theory behind Bridge is a thing called batch editing, to where if you take your photos under the same lighting conditions, then by editing one, you can copy those settings and then paste those on the rest of your photographs. So if you were taking a bunch of wedding photographs, for instance, where chances are most of those pictures are going to be under the same lighting conditions, you could, in theory, edit all of your photographs much quicker with batch editing. So I'm going to show you how to do that. First thing you would need to do is you would need to come down here to the Windows icon. And then you would want to open Adobe Bridge. Now it may take a little while for it to come up, especially when you first open it on these computers. But when it does open up, you should see something like this. And it may look definitely very different, maybe a little bit confusing. Just think of this as another interface for your computer. So I personally think the film strip view is the best view. So if you can see where my cursor is at, we're on Essentials. If we come right over here to Film Strip, click on that, we'll see a view like this. Now we see that down here we cannot read the titles of programs or folders. But if we come right down here, if you can see where my cursor is at, we see this little slider, and we move it over to the right a little bit, at least to where we can see the names of these folders and files, then you should be good to go. So from here, if we think of it as just another interface for the computer, we need to find the photographs that you've taken. So you should have taken probably about 15 or 20 photographs under the same lighting conditions, whether it's indoors or outdoors. What that means is if it's outdoors at the same time of day, indoors, you use the same lighting conditions. So leave the same lights on in the areas that you have taken your photograph. So for me, I'm just going to use some photos that I have on here. But for mine, they're in the pictures folder. So if we can see right over here on the left, we see libraries, we see this PC. It all depends on where you have saved those unedited photographs. So for me, it's in the pictures folder. So if I click on that, now we see all the folders that I have within that pictures folder. And I'm going to go ahead and use Bird's Eye, which is this first one. So if I double click on this, we should see these JPEGs. The reason I like the film strip view is that you can click on this, you can use the arrows on your keyboard and cycle through. It's just a nice little way to just get a nice preview of each photograph very quickly. You can also, if you hold Control and click on another photograph, you can select multiples at the same time, compare them. You'll see a little, if you hover over them, you see a little zoom icon. If you click on that, you can even come over here and click on that. You can move it around, so you can zoom on these in different areas and stuff like that for further investigation. If you want to get rid of that, click right up here in that top left corner of that magnifying box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the first one. So this is how you are going to batch edit. Now these ones aren't all taken under the same lighting conditions, but the steps are still going to be the same. So you're going to highlight that first one. Do not double click it, because if you double click it, it'll automatically open it up in Photoshop. So if you do that, you'll see Photoshop starting to open. And what you're going to want to do, so you just want to click on it once. So highlight that first image. And we can see right here that it opens that image up in Photoshop for me. So it is also another nice little gateway to Photoshop after you've done batch editing. If you wanted to do some extra like filtered effects, something that you couldn't necessarily do in this program, but you could do in Photoshop. So it's a pretty good program. So first thing, we highlight that one, and we're going to go to File, and we're going to go to Open in Camera Raw, or Control R if you like the shortcut. So if we click on this, and then if you remember Pixlr, this may seem a little bit more familiar, but you have temperature, you have tint, you have exposure. You can mess around with these, contrast, highlights, shadows, whites, blacks, saturation. So you can push the color a little bit. You can push your shadows. You can push your contrast. So what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to edit your photograph the way that you would want to edit it. So, and then once you are finished, you are going to go ahead and hit done. So once you're finished, you're going to go ahead and hit done, and then we'll pick this up in part 2.